On a strip of sandy soil lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario, south coast, you know, and it's surely not remote. On a strip of sandy soil lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario, south coast, you know, and it's surely not remote. If you pass through or spend a day or decide to call it home, you'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it our own. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore. Take a tour on a peaceful country road and bound to be back for more. Of Norfolk, Norfolk, my southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long.
Okay, looks like we can get started again. So our first deputation this morning is Inspector Joe Varga on behalf of the Norfolk County Police Services Board regards to the Project Speed Watch. If Mr. Varga could come forward. Hello, sir. We do typically limit the deputations to 10 minutes. If you need a little bit more time, whatever, just let me know given the nature of it. And then we'll move it over to councilors for some questions.
Okay. Good morning, Madam Mayor, Council. I understand that you have the proposal already in the package. So I'm before you today on behalf of the Norfolk County Police Service Board requesting your approval to enhance the safety and security of Norfolk County roadways through the purchase and installation of speed monitoring deterrent devices. Over the past 5 years, collisions resulting in injury and death have been trending upwards in Norfolk County. In 2018, Norfolk County experienced 11 fatal collisions resulting in 12 deaths on its roadways. This death toll is the highest it has been since prior to 2010. Speeding and inattentive driving were large contributing factors to this trend, with speeding or inattentive driving being cited as the primary cause in more than half of the fatal collisions. Recognizing that we could not solve the issues of speeding, inattentive driving, and collisions through enforcement alone, and that it would take a combined community effort, several years ago the Norfolk OPP partnered with Norfolk Roads, Engineering, Risk Management divisions to address these issues through means other than enforcement. This partnership is known as the Norfolk Collision Reduction Committee and focuses on county roadways that have been identified through data analysis as problem areas and focuses on determining what solution and/or resources need to be put in place in order to address these problems. These efforts consist not only of increased enforcement, but the redesigning of roads, addition of cautionary signs or traffic signals, public awareness campaigns, or a combination of efforts that will contribute to the reduction of speeding and collisions. The reduction of speeding and collisions, especially those involving injury and death, will have a significant impact on many levels. Not only will the public benefit from increased road safety, but so will emergency first responders such as police, fire, paramedics, and roads division. A reduction in collision types will lessen the demand on emergency services, as well as reduce the emotional and physical toll emergency responders are exposed to with each and every call for service. A reduction in collisions can also have a significant impact on Norfolk Division budgets, insurance claims, and lawsuits. Not only are collisions involving speed and inattentive driving trending upwards, so are the number of Norfolk County resident complaints involving speeding throughout the county, especially in many hamlet and designated speed transition areas. The Norfolk OPP, Police Service Board, Norfolk Roads Division, the Norfolk Mayor, and councilors routinely field speeding complaints. History has proven that enforcement alone will not only solve the speeding and inattentive issues in Norfolk County. There has to be a community collaboration to provide direction and desire for an attitude change within the motoring public towards speeding and inattentive driving. It is the Police Service Board's position that the addition of speed monitoring deterrent devices will assist in this attitude change and further increase the safety of Norfolk's roadways and provide for a safer Norfolk County for its residents and visitors. Various studies have shown that speed monitoring devices such as speed watch signs are effective in reducing speed. Studies have shown that when alerted by a speed watch sign, speeders will slow down 80% of the time, and typical average speed reductions are 10 to 20%, and overall compliance with the posted speed limit will increase by 30 to 60%. Studies have also shown that speed watch signs are effective in breaking the driving autopilot or highway hypnosis syndrome that inattentive drivers suffer from. Speed watch signs will help break the syndrome as they will work as a trigger and alert the driver to their speed and make them more aware. Further, as Council is probably aware, in 2019, under the Safer Ontario Act, every municipal council will be required to prepare a community safety and well-being plan. One of the identified risk factors to address this plan could be speeding and inattentive driving as it relates to road safety. Implementation of speed watch signage could be one of the several strategies to to address this community risk factor. As you will see in the documentation provided to Council regarding this project, included is an example description and estimated cost of the mobile sign and pole-mounted signs we are recommending and seeking. As indicated in the proposal, we are seeking that Norfolk County purchase one mobile speed watch trailer containing Speed Spy technology and 30 pole-mounted solar signs spaced over 5 years to lessen the impact on the yearly budgets. You will also see attached at the end of the proposal are letters of support from the Norfolk County Public Works Division, Norfolk County Fire Department, Norfolk County Paramedic Services, the Norfolk County Community Policing Committee chairs. It is our belief that with the support of this council and the community it serves, we can make a difference. And I'm open for questions if anyone has questions.
Thanks, sir. Councilor Columbus.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Inspector Varga, my question, do you anticipate that you would coordinate this movement of the trailer with the Public Works Department, or would the OPP be moving this trailer around, or how will that work?
The ownership of the trailer would, of course, be Norfolk County. However, in conjunction with Norfolk County roads, we could, the OPP would move the trailer around from place to place, as we're hoping that we can purchase one with the Speed Spy technology so that we can also get data from it regarding speed and volume of traffic, which we can provide to Norfolk Roads and the Collision Reduction Committee.
My second question, Madam Mayor, with the fact that the fine went up for inattentive driving January 1st, has it been noticed that there's a reduction in inattentive driving since January 1st?
Unfortunately not.
Not.
It occurs each and every day.
Thank you.
Councilor Rabbits.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through the chair to our deputation, the price per unit for the pole-mounted signs, I wanted to know, Inspector Varga, if that varies depending on the number of pole-mounted signs that we would approve. I see a figure of $7,750 per unit. Is that dependent on purchasing 30 as opposed to a dozen or one? Does that price per unit change depending on how many we're looking at acquiring?
Through the chair, the estimates that are provided in this proposal are just those estimates. I'm sure through the county purchasing, they could seek a bulk purchase order if they wanted to purchase them all at once or in several units. Just providing an estimate of cost, or their individual units, but I'm sure the county could perhaps leverage a better price on them.
Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Chop. Through you to Inspector Varga. Thank you for coming at Council's request so quickly. Initially, we had some questions about this report, and one of the questions was about placement of the signs. So are you able to place them on provincial highways, or is this something that would be looked at in more residential areas, or is there a plan for that?
The placement of the signs would be on Norfolk County property, Norfolk County signs, hoping that the Roads Division would take that on. The highest use area for these type of signs would be in the hamlet areas, not on provincial highways. Most effective use of these are in speed transition areas, which are the hamlets.
Just a follow-up question to that. Are most of the deaths that you cited within the hamlet areas, or are they on the highways?
Most of them are on Norfolk County roads, not provincial highways, such as McDowell. And out of the 11 fatal collisions, speeding has been cited, as I said, in over half of them.
Any further questions? Councilor Huffman.
Through you, Mayor, to Inspector Varga. So I would be assuming that the police department would have an idea as to the particular areas that have been hardest hit with fatalities and close calls?
Correct. We do keep data on collisions and complaints.
Okay. And so this information is regarding 30 signs, correct? At this point, 30?
Correct. Off the top of my head, I can list 10 spots where these signs would be quite beneficial.
Oh, so can I.
And 30 signs roughly equate to 15 locations, because in most locations, you would want a sign at either end of the zone. So 30, and I was spacing them over 5 years again, to make it easier on budget. However, leave it up to council. If they can purchase all 30 at once, I can definitely place them in conjunction with Norfolk County Roads and the Collision Reduction Committee.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Columbus?
Just another question. Highway 24 north of Simcoe to Scotland, it's quite a death row there. Any idea of how to reduce the speed on that major highway? It's provincial, I believe.
Well, Highway 24 is a focus of, we do run focus patrols and zero tolerance, zero collisions. Last year alone in our focus patrol there, we wrote over 400 speeding tickets. Unfortunately, part of Highway 24's issue is a design problem. It's a very heavily traveled road, probably should be more than 2 lanes, as well as the intersecting roads are offset. Again, it's a provincial highway. If council can get the province to change it, I would be more than ecstatic.
Thank you.
Just another question from me. Obviously, you know, with our health department and so on, we have a number of issues in Norfolk County. In fact, the opioid deaths in Norfolk now are higher than traffic fatalities as we look at how to spend our funding. I'm just curious, with 30 seems a lot to me, and so I guess my question would be to you, do these signs lose their effectiveness in a particular location after a period of time, i.e. as residents become accustomed to seeing them there and so on? There's sort of that initial, I don't want to say shock factor, but at first, you know, you perceive something, and as you become accustomed, you start to tune it out as you're driving. So is there any research on that?
I'm sure there is. As with anything, things will become stale over time. However, because they're pole-mounted signs and they're on Norfolk County poles, we can move them. So hopefully, if they're in a location for 2 years and we find that there is no longer an issue there because people now know they're complying with the law, then we can move them to a different location. So it's not like once they're in one location, that's the only place that we can
No,
have them.
I understand they're portable. It's just that with 30 signs being moved, we only have so many kind of
Well,
hamlets in Norfolk County, so.
I would think that once we have 1 or 2 signs up in a particular location, that everyone will want them. And I cite a letter that was sent by a Norfolk Port Dover resident, and I believe the mayor was also CC'd on it, as well as
I've received a few
Councillor
actually
Martin.
from people.
when I provided this report to the Police Service Board in November, they already requested one in their location, which is an identified risk factor.
Councillor Huffman.
Through you, Mayor, to Inspector Varga, but just a general comment is that I know in Ward 7 we have many hamlets. I'm not going to put one over the other, but we have a few fairly large hamlets. And already this week, prior to not even really having anything to do with this deputation, I've received calls about concerns in terms of Boston, Bealton, and Villanova. And was there one more in there? But those were 3. We've got a lot of traffic that goes through there at, and Bloomsburg, right, at some pretty high rates, so.
Okay, any further questions? Thank you, sir. I believe we already received the deputation's information into the records at the last meeting, so thank you. Next, we have Vernon Goebel from the Norfolk Federation of Agriculture to do a presentation on farm property assessment and taxes. Thank you for coming, sir.
Madam Mayor, Council of Norfolk, it's a pleasure to be here. My name is Larry Davis. I represent the Ontario Federation of Agriculture. It's an organization of 37,000 members across Ontario, farmers, and the Ontario Federation of Agriculture tries to keep policy in front of farmers and in front of governments in order to make farming profitable and viable within Ontario. In Norfolk County, you have 17 or 1,800 of those special farmers, probably one of the most diverse areas in Ontario, let alone in Canada. And I'm sure you're well aware of that, so I don't need to explain that to you. These are farm family businesses, probably the most prominent business as well in Norfolk County. So I'm here to introduce to you Ben Lafort, a senior policy analyst from the Ontario Federation of Agriculture, who graduated from Acacia College in 2010 and from the University of Guelph in 2013 with a master's degree in economics. He has worked full-time for the Ontario Federation of Agriculture since that, his main duty being risk management and tax policy. So it's my pleasure to introduce to you Ben Lafort.
Thanks, Larry. I'm just wondering, first of all, thank you to Mayor and Council and staff for having us. Just wondering if there was the PowerPoint we had sent forward on the screen, as if that's possible. There's a few visual related items. So if there's a clicker. Oh, okay. The visuals speak better than I can articulate, so.
Apologies, my staff who normally does this was sick this morning, I guess, so
Oh,
it isn't
okay.
up there. I can run down and grab a USB and put it up there, but it'll take 5 minutes.
Okay. Okay, so I suppose if everyone does have the slides, I can, I didn't number them, but I can remind everyone when I'm switching to the next slide, and we can try to follow along that way if that works for everybody. Oh, some of them might have. That's okay. Yeah, appreciate that. I got my own little notes
We can
on
take
mine,
a break if you want him to run and grab it.
Sure, I suppose, and if that's easier, yeah.
I'll just be right back. I just
Sure.
don't have a USB. I have it
Okay.
here on my computer. Unless somebody has a USB here.
I have one in my office.
Yeah, well, I have it. I just want to make sure it's on the screen so that everyone can kind of follow along. Yeah, thanks. So. go. All right. Okay, sure. All right, really appreciate that. Thank you. All right, so take two. Yeah, thank you so much, Mayor and Council and staff, for having us. Again, I'm Ben LaForde. I'm with the Ontario Federation of Agriculture staff there, and I handle tax policy, both federal, provincial, and municipal property tax related issues for OFA. And the property tax piece in particular has kept me very busy. It's actually, we survey our members each year about what their issues of most concern that they want OFA looking into on their behalf. And property tax for the last few years has far and away been the #1 issue by members across the province. If we go to the next slide, please. As Larry was mentioning, farming and agriculture is a significant business in Norfolk County. Some new stats we have from the Ministry of Agriculture. Unfortunately, they always cram Norfolk and Haldimand together, so apologies for that. It's not my data, but just kind of between the two counties combined, Norfolk being more significant in terms of number of farms. Total of about 2,150 farms between the two areas. In terms of farm cash receipts sales, that's slightly over $800 million, and the GDP that is contributed from those sales is nearing $2.5 billion to the provincial economy, and over 51,000 jobs supported through those sales. If we go to that, thank you very much. What I'm here to discuss today again. So, why has property tax been, our members' #1 issue the last couple of years? It's been because of the new assessments that are now being phased in. The new MPAC assessments have been significant increase in the taxable assessment for farmland throughout the province, particularly Southwest Ontario. Counties like Norfolk, Elgin, others in the region. This isn't necessarily a new issue. The previous assessment cycle, as we will see, saw large increases in the assessment for farm properties as well, but now it's reaching a point where we're kind of building on top of previous assessment increases, and it's becoming a significant tax burden for farm property owners. And just a little quick refresher on how those assessments work. So it's a 4-year assessment cycle for MPAC. We're currently now in the 3rd year of that assessment cycle, where any of those increases are phased in equally over the 4-year period. So we had phase-in assessments in 2017 and 2018, which we'll see in a few moments, has caused additional farm tax burden in Norfolk County and others. In 2019 and 2020, that will continue, and in terms of a dollar amount, that will magnify because now we're building on top of previous increases, and they begin to get larger. If we go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So in the end, the long and short of the request is, in light of those assessments, realizing that really there's going to be two things that's going to impact the property tax burden for any property class, whether it's farm or residential, commercial, industrial, is how have the assessments that MPAC delivers, how have they changed for that property class? So how has the farm assessments changed compared to the residential and commercial within that county, and how has the county tax ratio policy changed? So those are the two factors that are going to determine the tax burden. And when I say the tax burden, I'm talking about the proportion of your total taxes that you collect, how much of that is coming from a particular property. And if we can go to the next slide, in this assessment cycle, we saw the taxable assessment for farmland increase by 57%, whereas residential values increased by only 10%. And that's really the issue that's causing the shift, because tax ratios have maintained, they've been the same. Since those have not changed, and we see farmland is increasing in value at 5.7 times the rate that residential is, if we continue to maintain the similar tax ratios, we'll see what's happened in the past continue to happen, which is a growing amount of your total taxes being collected from the farm properties. So more and more of your total budget coming from the same number of properties. So it's kind of an example there. The middle column is showing the property tax burden. Again, what percentage of your total taxes are collected from farm properties. In 2016, that was 5%. And then as the assessments began to phase in, it moved up to 5.7, 6.4. This year, if there's no adjustment, it'll be just over 7%. And then next year, if that is not adjusted again further next year, that would be approaching then 8%. And it's kind of a double whammy because this middle column here, really what that is showing is if you think of your total taxes collected as, a tax pie, the farmer's slice of the pie is getting bigger each year. And at the same time, due to inflation and other costs, the county needs to increase its budget. So the pie is getting bigger and the farmer's portion of that pie is getting bigger. Now, we don't have any comment on the size of the pie. The county needs to do its budget process and collect what it needs to collect. We have no comment on that. What we are here today is about the farmer's increasing slice of that pie. So whether you grow that tax revenue you need by 1% or 10%, that's not necessarily what we're here to request of you. It's maintaining the already record size of the farmer's proportional share of that tax pie. And if we go to the next slide, we'll kind of, this is the visual that I think is most important. And this is showing from the last 20 years, from 2001 to 2020. I would have gone back further, but 2001 was the last public, the furthest back I could get the data for your financial information returns online from Ministry of Municipal Affairs. But essentially what it's showing is, around 2001, you collected around 4.7% of the total taxes from farm properties. And, I will add as well that back in 2001, there was more farm properties to spread that throughout than there are today. Then through the next number of years, that proportion kind of increased slightly and decreased slightly. And then starting in 2012, as I mentioned, this isn't a new issue for Southwest Ontario. Assessments in Southwest Ontario for farm property has been rising for a number of years. So 2012 to 2016, by the time you get to 2016, you're kind of back already at the high point in terms of that farm property tax burden. And then now with these new significant increases in assessments for 2017 to 2020, we see the right end of that graph gets a lot steeper, very steep. And by the end of that in 2020, you're significantly you're setting basically a new significant record in terms of the percentage of your total taxes collected from farm properties. And in fact, in 2018, you're already at a record high in terms of the size of that farmer tax pie, or slice of the pie. Our request here essentially would be that, where the graph is in 2018, at around 6.4% of the total taxes, which again is more than you've ever collected from the farm properties, the tax ratio request we have would maintain that 6.4%. So if you increase your budget by 10%, 5%, that's how much farm taxes would increase by. They would not be paying less tax than they did the year before, but their share of the taxes will remain at the current record high rather than setting a new record for the next 2 years. And if we could move to the next slide. Again, that's really just talking about the only other tool that we have in the toolbox to address this. Again, there's two things that'll determine that slice of the pie. One is the impact assessments, which municipalities have no influence over. Nobody does. MPAC delivers the assessments. They are what they are. And then the only other piece is the tax ratio policy, which is only in control of upper and single-tier municipalities. They have the authority to adjust the farm tax ratio anywhere between 0 and 25% of the residential, local residential tax rate each year. So through the tax ratio policy is the only tool to prevent the MPAC assessments from determining the tax burden in the County of Norfolk for the next 2 years. And particularly in 2019 is really the only, oh yeah, we can go to the next slide. Yeah, thank you. I have all 4 years of the assessment cycle up here, but really 2019 is the only tax ratio year you can vote on. Just to show you kind of, again, how the assessments are phased in each year, the crossed out red numbers 2017 and 2018 are what the ratios would have been to maintain where farm property tax burden was at the end of the last assessment cycle. Over the last 2 years, that has increased significantly. Really, what I want to focus on is 2019, what tax ratio would be required to prevent, farmers' slice of the total tax pie from setting a new record in terms of its proportion. That would be adjusting the tax ratio from 0.25 to 0.23. And again, that wouldn't be a reduction in taxes. That would just be farmers' increase in taxes being relative to how much you need to increase the budget by. And if we go to the last slide here, just as a kind of hypothetical example. Oh, no, there's a few more actually, sorry. So again, this is not a issue restricted only to Norfolk County. This is really any county that has a large amount of farms. We've been seeing this to some degree or another. In Middlesex and Elgin and Oxford and Brant and Lambton County, anywhere all throughout Southwest Ontario, Huron and Grey, the assessment of farmland has been outstripping all the other properties, and that's been causing a shift in tax onto all those farms throughout the province. And that, again, is why OFA members have identified this as their #1 issue, because it's kind of universally happening to some degree. Some other municipalities, particularly of note of some in Southwest Ontario, we've engaged in similar discussions, and they have elected to reduce that tax ratio to prevent further increases in tax burden. Most notably would be Oxford, Lambton, Brant, and Chatham-Kent in terms of the Southwest counties of note. And with this year in 2019, many of our county federations will be engaging in similar discussions in Middlesex and Elgin, in Grey County, Huron, all throughout, because again, this is the farm assessments now. We're in the 3rd year of that, and now farmers are really beginning to feel that because, again, we're building on top of previous increases and the magnitude begins to increase significantly. I think we have a few more slides. We go to the next one. The last one here.
I'm just going to have to hurry you along.
Okay, I'll be super quick. Basically, just to show that the percentage increase in taxes, what does that actually mean year over year? So in 2017, the first year of that assessment cycle, farm taxes increased by 15%, whereas other property classes were only increasing, 2 to 3%, basically what you need, whatever your budget increased by. And in 2018, it's around 13%. Again, it'll be another double-digit percent this year if we don't adjust the tax ratio. If you did adjust the tax ratio, the increase would be only relative to how much you increased your budget by. I put 3% there just as a placeholder, but whatever you increase your budget by, that would be the increase in farm property tax this year, just to show that it would be relative, it would be increasing, but just slowing that increase. So I'm very happy to open to any questions, comments, discussions you may have, and thank you again for having us today.
Thank you. Councillor Van Passen.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you to the deputation. An excellent report on the fairness ratios, but could you explain a bit more how the tax system works, and that we're only talking about the farmland, that municipality doesn't provide any services to the land, it's taxed at a lower rate than the farm residents, where the people are that are provided services, they pay exactly the same taxes as if that house were in a hamlet or in town. Could you elaborate on that?
Sure. Thank you for the question. So farm properties is kind of really one of the most, in terms of assessment, diverse properties you're going to find in terms of assessing, because you have generally two pieces. You have the farm piece where the active farming operation is happening. That is taxed at the farm tax ratio, and that is specifically the land that we're talking about here today, is on that productive land where the income is generated from. And that is taxed between 0 and 25% of the residential rate as council decides each year. And the reason, for that is back in 1998 when we had tax reform, they introduced a number of different property classes, and a few years after that, initially it was kind of hardwired at 0.25, and a few years later the province allowed counties and single-tier municipalities that wiggle room to adjust the farm tax ratio for this very reason, right? If there is a need to, enact your policy to counteract what's happening with MPAC, this is the tool to use it, whereas the other portion of the property is typically, where if the farm residence is in the residential tax class. So when you're looking at your total residential taxes, those farmhouses are in that residential tax class as well, and they pay the full residential tax rate on their house plus 1 acre, minimum of 1 acre of land as well. It is taxed at the residential tax rate. And the final thing I would suggest to that is if there is any change to the farm tax ratio, the residents that would see the most impact from this change would be farm residences. Those farm residents would have among the largest, not that it's a hugely significant relative to what farm has been increasing by, but the farm residents, those are the residential units that would see the largest per dollar tax increase as a result of a reduction in the ratio, just to show that this is in complete benefit to the farmers. They are a part of the residential property class, and anything that's shifted onto them, they absorb as well. But we're talking about to that portion of the property that generates the income, that generates the GDP and supports those jobs that we set out at the beginning of the presentation.
Councillor Huffman.
Thank you, Mayor Chop. Through you to the deputation. Lots of great information, and I'm going to preface my questions with, yes, as Ward 7 councillor, I am quite cognizant that I have a large farming community. But I want to ask some questions just to make sure that I have a better understanding. So if assessments, impact does the assessments, taxes go up, but in turn, that would allow farmers to have an increased debt ratio. Accurate?
If land values have risen, yes, particularly if those were purchased with mortgages, which many of them would be, the debt will rise with those values. And really, the only benefit to a farmer of that land value increasing, it doesn't make your land, doesn't increase the price of corn or increase their yield.
Right.
It'll increase their ability to leverage and take debt.
Okay. And so I guess a question would be, this probably wouldn't be anything that would obviously happen today or this week, but has it ever been, has anyone ever thought of looking at the actual revenue taxing based on the revenue of a farm?
Yes, OFA has been suggesting that for many years. We, many years ago, put forward a proposition to the province that they use yield and commodity price data to come up with a income approach to assessing farmland, because that is really the issue here. Is the MPAC is legislated to use sales of farmland, and sales of farmland have been increasing significantly. That's the market value. The market value, really, why is farmland increase? There could be a number of reasons. It comes down to a basic economics. We have a fixed supply of farmland. We're not making any new farmland. In fact, we're losing farmland each year, so we have a decreasing supply and tremendous demand for farmland. When a farm goes up, if there's 10 farmers in the area, there aren't many farms that are going up for sale because there's only a limited supply. They're going to bid, and they're bidding against other folks who see land as an investment, developers who see farmland as a future place to build houses. So the demand for farmland is increasing significantly, and the supply is going down. And whenever you have demand increasing and supply decreasing, you're going to see prices rise. So that is the cause of that. And if we could move to something that's more reflective of what farmers actually produce in income from the property, I wouldn't be here today because it wouldn't be an issue. Because if their farm taxes were increasing, that means that's because the farm cash profits were increasing along with it. So commodity prices have been up and down, but certainly has not been a 57% increase in commodity prices in the last 2 years. So it's not necessarily reflective of the agricultural value. It's only reflecting the market value.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay.
Councillor Columbus.
Yes, thank you, Ben. Good presentation. What about a second house on the farm or a bunkhouse? How are they assessed?
Yeah, so if it is used to house farm workers, it will be typically, it might be a tax at the farm rate, but it kind of depends on what the use is. If it's just an empty second house, residential, if there's a clear farm business used for it that is directly related to the farm, then it may be taxed at farm. But again, that's one of the many complications of farm assessment. MPAC classifies everything based on use. So if it's a vacant house, it'll be residential.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Thank you very much, sir.
Thank
I
you.
have a motion Or you can take a seat, actually.
Sorry?
You can have a seat.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions from councilors? Councilor Van Passen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Since our gallery is full, would the treasurer please explain, like it was explained to us earlier on this morning, when we would deal with this issue?
So through the, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Van Passen, I will let Sue Bugner, our tax collector, manager of revenue services, answer that question.
Thank you, Mayor Chop. To Councillor Van Passen. Ideally, the best time to discuss and set tax ratios is later in the year when all the tax policies are set. By then, the annual levy operating budget has been determined and staff can give a more accurate picture of what changing a tax ratio, how the shifts will affect different classes. At this early stage in the budget process, the figures that we could provide would be speculative at best. So if council is so inclined, staff would bring back a report later in this year for further discussion. As well, a report was done in 2017 that focused somewhat on the farm tax issue just after reassessment. And I'd be happy to give this council a copy of that for background information.
That would be helpful. Thank you. Councilor Van Passen, anything further?
No, I've been at that podium a couple of years ago when they had that other report arguing the same thing that the Federation is arguing today. And I think back in 2012, I was at that podium, that it's this is the second 50% plus increase in the assessments on the land in the last 2 cycles. And you're noticing that shift in that burden on land that the county doesn't really provide any service to. The service comes off the houses. The houses pay the exact same rate of tax as if they were anywhere else in the urban areas, in the hamlets. And it's just that, again, that goes back to that matter of fairness. Right?
How much lobbying has gone on, further to Councilor Huffman's suggestion, in terms of taxing based on yields and products and so on that's coming off of? I mean, we do have a unique situation here in Norfolk County with some farms producing significantly more income than other farms.
I did make the aside that most of the farms, the way the price of corn and beans are, we'd have to be paying them instead of them paying taxes because they're losing money. So,
well, no, that's what I'm saying. Some making significantly more than others with a few special crops.
The ones that are making the money are the ones that are driving up the price so that everybody is paying the bill because, like, well, ginseng is a good example where they're buying the farms to keep their rotation going, and that's running up the value because the only sales are going to those farmers, and that is sort of what MPAC is looking at, is on the sale prices.
Maybe I could ask our presenter just to step back up again. So in terms of, obviously I'm driving at the ginseng operations, is there something that has been looked at before, particularly given the uniqueness to Norfolk? I mean, these are farms that are producing significantly more income, that are depleting the soil, that is sending the product, out of Ontario. It's not that there's a huge, and this is no knock on our ginseng farmers at all right now, but just as we compare that small, farm that's got 100 acres of corn versus, a massive ginseng operation, how do you differentiate between the two? Like right now, we're looking at an 8.6% potential increase that's with some reductions in there on our residential taxpayers. How do you justify that?
Well, so if there would be an 8% increase on the residential taxes, it would be closer to a 20% increase on the farm taxes. After a 15% and 13% increase the last few years, we would justify this request as basically saying, again, we're not to comment on the size of the tax pie. You need to increase by 8% to cover the services delivered. That's what you need to do. That's life. What we're commenting on with the ratio is the farmer's relative share of that has been increasing each year for the past, if we go to 2020, it'll be back to 2012. So 8 straight years of the farmer's share of that taxes increasing each year. So if there's an 8% increase on residential, there'll be closer to a 20% increase on the farm property. And that is a very significant. If residential or commercial industrial had a 20% increase after a 13 and a 15% increase 2 years before, you bet they would be, you know, very concerned as well.
Can I ask just what's the average, like on a 100-acre farm, what would an average tax bill look like?
Well, that, in Norfolk, I'm not quite sure. I'm not sure the average assessment per acre and all that. Hard to say in terms of the dollar per farm or dollar per acre at the, right now.
Anybody in the audience, 100-acre farm, taxes? Okay. Oh, I think that's what a lot of people are doing, right?
I guess the argument is if your houses had gone up in value as much as our farmland, you wouldn't have this discussion. Because residential property tax kept up with our share of the farm. But it hasn't, which we feel isn't fair.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have somebody else in the audience would like to speak. Thank you. Councillor Columbus.
So I had a question following Councillor Huffman's inquiry about the farm income, if it was done that way. Ben, if you can answer this, I take it that would be a gross farm income that you'd have to consider, not a net farm income.
Right. Yeah, so ideally, we in the past have put forward, a proposal that would base the assessments off yield and price information, right, to get an idea, a picture of what income is coming in from the farm. That never went 1 inch with any government we've ever put that forward to. Various reasons, they think it would be too complicated, too difficult for, if you look at the grand scheme of the whole province, a very small property class when we're talking about, you know, all the cities as well, that MPAC also does all those properties. So, they've been very adamant. We're going to stick to sales for now, and we'll be hopeful. We are continuing to look at other ways. Potentially another way would be looking at the rental information. What would a farmer rent the land for the purposes of farming it? That would be another kind of backdoor way to get at the income side of things, and there are a few projects that we're involved in to kind of collect that data, but for now, this is unfortunately the reality we have to live with.
Is there a lot of lobbying going on at the provincial level, given that this is a provincial-wide issue?
Yep. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. So every time there's new government, we approach them about this. Approach the last government. Approach the new government. There was a notion from a few Southwest counties about, you know, would the province intervene on this? We met with the Minister of Agriculture, Minister of Finance, and there is no interest in either the previous government or this government intervening in a situation like this. Their response back was quite clear that the province has given county and single-tier municipalities the tax ratio tools to adjust this, and that it is even if it is happening on many counties throughout the province, in each county that they've said that is a property tax policy that must be made by the counties, and they did not feel it was their place to make that, to intervene on that, unfortunately.
Thank you. Any further questions from anybody? I need to have a motion before me, if somebody could move this, that the deputation of Larry Davis and Ben LaForge of the Ontario Federation of Agriculture be received as information. Do I have a mover? Councillor Rabbit, seconder, Councillor Huffman. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming and showing your support. Does anybody need a quick washroom break while they're leaving?
What I love most about Norfolk County, I think, would be the vastness of the county, how it's big and there's breathing space, and there are so many little pockets of beauty, natural beauty.
I love the seasons here. The springtime, the rain falling on the earth. I'm a farmer, so I enjoy those aspects of it, the smell of the rain. The summer times, we have beautiful, warm summers here.
You have such pristine water here. You have some of the finest cold water streams in Ontario with Big Creek and Youngs Creek and others that produce great fishing.
Norfolk is very heavily forested, beautiful color in the autumn. The sun shines very brightly here in the wintertime, so I love the 4 distinct seasons we have here in Norfolk County.
What people find remarkable about Norfolk County, I think, is that our sense of community and us working together.
I think of us as a little bit of, we have these ecospheres in our store. They're these self-sustaining little balls that, you know, completely take care of themselves. We're a little bit like that, you know, in our area. We have so much here.
My kids grow up knowing what